Thank you, everyone. We have the pleasure of being your final conversation, panel, fireside chat, something like that. My name is Michelle Shevin. I am principal. Yeah, I think you have to go all the way over there. Sorry. As my co-conversationalists join us, I'll just say I'm starting with a lot of gratitude. My name is Michelle Shevin. I'm the founder and principal of something called the Future Preservation Society, which doesn't matter for the purposes of this conversation.
It does.
Thanks, Katie.
Michelle does incredible work. Don't let her fool you.
I just feel like I must have done something right because I have the illustrious honor of both introducing and then being in conversation with two of the most exciting and personally, for me, inspiring leaders in American philanthropy. It's my sincere pleasure to welcome to the stage, just on time, Dr. Allison Scott, CEO of the Kapor Foundation, and to my left, Katy Knight, president of the Siegel Family Endowment. Thank you both for being here. And there is an announcement on the recent horizon for a pooled fund / new philanthropic initiative and vehicle that both of your foundations and both of you as leaders are involved with. It's called Humanity AI. You both know I love a pooled fund, but sometimes in philanthropy, a pooled fund gets talked about and there's kind of like a collective groan. Tell me a little bit about how Humanity AI came together. What do you hope it will signal to the field, and why are you both excited about it?
Yeah, you want to start?
Sure, I'm happy to kick us off. Thank you all for sticking with us. We're really excited to talk about this work, and thank you, Michelle, for moderating. So as two philanthropic organizations that have long been focused on rebuilding a more equitable technology ecosystem, there were a few trends as AI has continued to evolve that we've been paying a lot of attention to. So one has been obviously the outsized power of the tech industry and the impact of just a few big tech firms making decisions about AI's design and deployment. The second is then the fact that broad swaths of society have been disengaged or disconnected and excluded from AI's development, particularly the most marginalized communities. And then the third piece is that we've been also seeing just the lack of deep and meaningful engagement amongst philanthropy. And in one of what we believe to be one of the most critical issues of our time. And I'll just say, Michelle has been a leader in this space for many years as well, but we've been kind of seeing each other in rooms all the time and not seeing more broad engagement. And so conversations began about 6 months ago around the need for real collaboration across diverse areas of focus. So these foundations are focused on things like climate and democracy and health and education, and not necessarily specifically on technology, but seeing the impact that AI can have in their spaces has really, I think, spurred them to action.
I said no at first. Michelle and I worked together on the Public Interest Technology Infrastructure Fund for several years, trying to promote the notion that more philanthropies and philanthropists should care about technology issues, because no matter your sector, tech is touching it in some way, influencing it, being influenced by it, and we needed more voices around a table that were willing to engage on tech issues broadly with a public interest mindset. And we've been doing that work for several years, since maybe 2018 or so. I was very tired and there were so many AI efforts popping up, and it felt like everyone just wanted to name an AI thing so they could say they were doing it. So my immediate reaction to hearing about the notion of this was, I don't want to do that. And then after some reflection and some cajoling, I think what flipped things for me was that, unlike with the Pitt Fund, where we were trying to convince funders from other disciplines to come to the table, this was a bunch of funders who aren't really tech funders, right? So you have Siegel, Kapor, Omidyar that you would think of as tech funders, but I don't think of MacArthur. They have a technology in the public interest program, but they're not known for tech funding. Doris Duke is not known for tech funding. And the other foundations that are involved are very much in their specific issue areas, but they came to the table recognizing this moment matters. we're not entirely sure what to do, but I think we can figure it out together. And if we don't, the impact will be so much broader than just what these AI companies were doing. And I think that really helped me feel a lot more enthusiastic about being a part of this, and now makes me feel really confident that we're actually going to get somewhere with it.
I am also confident. People want their actions to mean something. We've been brought here tonight to talk about human agency. And I think an interesting thing about a lot of the generative AI tools that we've been focused on today is that they feel responsive, right? You put in a prompt, something comes back pretty reliably. It may not be reliably correct, but it comes back. And so you might say that these tools are increasing people's sense of agency. And maybe that's a market signal of sorts. We've been having a lot of the passive scroll, and now we're seeing some demand for the call and response. I'm curious how human agency is coming up in your work right now and why it feels like a good focus for the Humanity AI effort.
I think at Siegel, over the long term, always having been focused on the impact of technology on society, thinking about what are the uniquely human roles, what are the uniquely human things that we need to hang on to, that we need to ensure people understand and are capable of doing in the face of ever-changing technology. That for me is where trying to help people maintain and ideally obtain their agency and more agency has been at the center of everything we do. I think so much of my career in philanthropy, especially having I came to philanthropy out of Google. And so I learned a lot about big tech narratives and how much narrative matters to this notion of agency. And this sense of inevitability that we've built this and you will use it no matter what can be challenged. We don't have to do anything. And humans are actually deeply irrational. So why should we do anything, right? And I think that sense of let's maintain some of our irrationality, let's maintain our ability to make our own choices is what's been driving our work. And I think my hope with Humanity AI is that we can do some of the wayfinding on how we get agency into the hands of more people with the expertise that is necessary to make things better with AI rather than worse.
I would just add on the collective agency piece. I think it feels oftentimes, and I think there's often quotes that you hear about this, that it feels as though AI is happening to us as opposed to us dictating what we want, design the types of tools that we want, articulate the types of products that we will and will not use. But it seems like there's a shift underway. And I think that's one of the things that Humanity AI and the investments coming out of the pooled fund, as well as some of the principles that I'll talk about later coming out of the Kapor Foundation, are trying to articulate what types of efforts can we support that'll build more momentum and build collective impact, collective knowledge, collective power, and agency amongst a broad variety of groups to demand something different and to demand what we actually want to see from a responsible and equitable AI future.
I love that. And it reminds me of one of my favorite things that I got to work on while I was your colleague at the Ford Foundation, which was really about community self-determination in an age where this technology is often being done to communities. So how do you actually build with communities the capacity to not just resist and refuse these technologies, although that's often part of it, but also sort of reclaim the narrative about what's possible for the future, about what communities want for their future, and then start a conversation about what technology might help get there. I noticed, though, that this frame of community self-determination is often interpreted as equivalent to an anti-AI or anti-technology stance, but the underlying questions around any deployment of AI is usually not just this binary to AI or not to AI, right? That's kind of a trap around this inevitability narrative, where we're trapped just saying, do we want the AI or not? It's often about who gets to decide, and I really heard that in your comments, like this question of who gets to decide is central. And there's other questions too, right? On what basis is that decision legitimate? Who's responsible for that decision? So what are some of the other reframes that you find helpful in this work, or some of the other fundamental questions that keep coming up, where it's like, okay, we can push past this binary of to AI or not to AI and think about actually who gets to decide? What are some similar, what does that bring up for you, or what are some similar sort of reframe moments that you like?
Sure. So I think Many of these are the same questions. I keep referring to the principles, which I will provide a more comprehensive overview in just a second. Kapor Foundation just released our responsible AI principles on Monday of last week. But I think these are the questions that we aim to articulate in these principles. So some of these questions are, what is the problem that we are actually trying to solve? And which problems do we deem as important to solve? And therefore, how are we going to resource those solutions in order to solve those problems? Who benefits from this technology? Who's actually benefiting economically? Are investors the ultimate beneficiaries, or maybe the only beneficiaries, while massive amounts of people are displaced from jobs? What are new opportunities for ensuring economic benefits or opportunities can be more evenly distributed? I've got lots of questions. How do we protect marginalized communities from further harm? What are guardrails that we can put in place? And are there use cases that, due to a variety of historical biases and barriers that that many of us have researched for decades, that AI should never be used in decision making? So beyond refusal, but refusal of use. And then who has power in policy decision making is a big question I think that we should all be trying to grapple with. Ultimately, in the battle for children's online safety, whose voices matter? Is it parents or tech lobbyists? In the battle for data centers, whose voices matter? Is it community members or tech lobbyists? Those are some of the questions.
I would just add sort of broad strokes that I think we can't allow things like, I don't know, the concept of regulation to be turned into this like bomb that, is, if you believe in anything related to regulation, you're anti-AI. If you believe that we should move a little slowly when we think about deploying child-facing AI tools in K-12 schools, you're anti-AI. When someone called me an AI skeptic, which, sure, but I think he didn't mean it in the way that I took it. I took it as a compliment, but I think he said, people have said you're an AI skeptic, like that's bad. I think it's actually quite fine, especially when we're talking about large language model-based AI, to be skeptical about what is actually possible. I think it's perfectly fine to say, is AGI really on the horizon? What is super intelligence? Do we even know what intelligence is in the human brain? What we fund at Siegel work at MIT on something called the Quest for Intelligence. It's a combination of neuroscience researchers and computer science researchers actually trying to understand the human brains to help think about new models for building artificial intelligence. And they don't think that super intelligence is around the corner because we know so little about what's happening inside of our own heads. How can we have such hubris that we think we can replicate it without understanding it, right? So I think there's a lot coming back to that narrative point that I made earlier that just when you poke at it doesn't quite make sense and people don't want you to poke at it. And I think that piece for me is the biggest reframe is just, if I poke, is this actually a bubble that pops or is it something resilient that pushes back?
I love that. And it reminds me of, how much work the term AI and artificial intelligence is doing. I think, many people in this room will be familiar that the term has been around since the 1950s. It's referred to things including spell check and robotics. And now, of course, we say AI in 2025. We're often talking about large language models and even more specifically GPTs. And yet this term AI is still so flexible. I think sometimes it's referring to technologies more or less specifically. Sometimes it's referring to market forces and power dynamics. And sometimes it's actually referring to our hopes and anxieties and dreams about the future. What is something that makes you hopeful about the future? And what do you hope audience members might be leaving this conversation inspired to think more about or work with each other on?
When I talk to sarcastic, maybe slightly apathetic young people, it actually gives me a lot of hope. Their skepticism, I find, and that's because I'm from here. I was also a skeptical, sarcastic, and apathetic youth. So I see them. But it really does, I think this sense of not everything is what it seems that they understand sort of intuitively is really something that gives me some hope. And then I also think to not entirely say that AI is terrible all the time, I think there actually are some exciting use cases for artificial intelligence tools. We have an effort that is focused on AI for scientific discovery and thinking about how AI can help power moving more quickly through the work that often is, the trial and error that has to occur in order to find new things. So I think there is positive potential for this emerging technology and other technologies to come. And there's, I think, a hopeful, healthy dose of skepticism on the part of people younger than me that will make a difference in how we adopt and adapt to these technologies.
I would totally agree with that. I would add, places like this that we can have conversations to discuss alternatives, I think are really helpful and hopeful. And again, not just tooting our own horns around Humanity AI, but literally why we are so excited and why we joined Humanity AI is there is a groundswell of momentum that feels like it's continuing to build with a whole variety, huge swaths of the public sector joining forces. And I think by putting a signal out to the field, what I'm also hopeful for, and we're only like 2 weeks out from the announcement, but we've already started to see a bunch of inbound suggestions and ideas and new opportunities and things that might not have ever come across our radar before and might not have ever had the opportunity to be supported and galvanize resources and scale into things such that we have never seen what the opportunities are because we have not resourced them appropriately. And then I would say that on the other side, and this is on the philanthropic side, on the startup side, I think there's still a ton of opportunity for individuals who subscribe to similar principles and values to identify ways in which AI technologies can be used for very powerful gap closing opportunities for the most marginalized communities. And so I think there's still a ton of opportunity there if we can galvanize the investor community as well.
Well, that's a great segue. You've talked a little bit about the AI principles, but I note that they're, principles for investment, and I want to ask you how you envision them being used, not just in philanthropy, but really across a landscape that often within philanthropy, we feel like we're the whole game, but obviously, especially when it comes to AI, massive amount of financial investment going through venture capital and other forms of investment. How will the principles help?
So as of now, we have, and you can download the principles at the kaporcenter.org website. There are 5 principles, and I can run through them very quickly. One is to utilize a socio-technical framework to identify challenges and meaningful solutions. Second, to incorporate pro-social design principles and continually assess broader societal impacts. The third is to support AI initiatives that shift power. The fourth is to promote critical AI literacy and education across society. And the fifth is to build collective mechanisms for governance and accountability. And the reason that I ran through them is so that you can see a little bit of the way that those are structured. So those are guiding principles for strategic grant making. So what are the types of initiatives, nonprofits, a variety of different efforts that could be supported that align with those principles. And to your point, what we're also working on is building out a set of investment criteria that we can diligence potential for-profit solutions along those same criteria. So if we can have conversations with both the philanthropic community as well as the investor community about investing more broadly in a responsible AI future, that's the goal.
It's brilliant. And for what it's worth, I'm not just saying this because I'm up on stage, but the principles are excellent. They were informed by an amazing cross-section of civil society and other researchers, and you should absolutely download them right now. Not right now. Listen to us. This has been a really interesting conversation, and it brings up one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Chelsea Barabas, which is AI is a terrain for the struggle. There's lots of approaches that philanthropy can put into play, investing in a range of different technologies and organizations that are approaching those technologies in different ways, strategic litigation, community organizing, narrative change, corporate accountability, building tech solutions themselves. How do you think about this balance? And at your, perch of 50,000 feet or 300,000 feet, I always just think of it as like in the sky in philanthropy. How fun is it for you to get to think about this different mix of approaches? And how do you think about like putting together a portfolio within your institutions that meets the right mix of flavors to come together into a beautiful bouquet? Sorry to mix metaphors.
We try to think about the hypotheses we have about what's going on and what we can do that helps us learn more about the best next step. I often talk about in our work at Siegel, there's a difference between a will problem and a way problem. A will problem to me is one where we know what to do, but we just don't have the will to do it. And that might be political will, it might be something else. So the example I always give is like, there's no reason that anywhere on earth people should be hungry. We have enough food. That's a problem of will. And there are ways that you can approach solving will problems. And I think there's a piece of philanthropy that should be focused on those will problems. For us at Siegel, we're a bit more focused on way problems, the things where we don't yet know how to do what needs to be done. And we're going to try to figure it out actively through a mix of research and on the ground work. So when I'm trying to look at like from the 300,000 foot view, the right mix of things. It's the right mix of learning opportunities with the right mix of folks who are willing to talk to each other across traditional silos. I think we, big royal we, those of us who care about tech in the public interest over the last couple decades, have a lot of lessons learned from the social media era. We also already know a lot, and I can't sit in front of Kathy and not say this, about algorithmic bias. And guess what? Like the algorithms are still here. So what are we doing with the knowledge that we have? How are we applying it? How are we taking the missteps that we may have made in the past and figuring out ways to get out in front and ahead of those things for the future? Like, I think that sort of level of conversation is what really matters if we're going to see change and see things happen differently than they have in the past and see the power dynamic hopefully shift.
I can just add two quick things. So one, at the Kapor Center, more broadly, we're able to use a variety of different mechanisms to impact our work on creating a more inclusive tech ecosystem. So on the foundation side, we use both philanthropic capital as well as investment capital. We also, our sister organization is Kapor Capital, which does seed stage startup investing for gap closing startups. And then we also have a nonprofit, Smash, which is working with high school students to get them more interested in STEM and computer science careers. So I would just say there are a whole variety of mechanisms that can be used and deployed. And just a few quick examples of some of the organizations that we support, because to your point, we can support nonprofit organizations, we can support journalists, we can support scholars, we do all of that. We are interested, as you all both have been as well, in building a pipeline. Like, how do we build a pipeline of a more diverse group of, diverse in every aspect, group of technologists who will create the technologies of the future, but also folks who just understand technology and can go into public policy and law and any variety of fields, but have a technological perspective, and especially what's relevant to us, a critical lens on that work. And we also support policy advocacy work. And one thing that I'm really interested in now on that front, and I think we can do a lot more on the philanthropic side, is supporting organizations to build more grassroots support. So we have more momentum amongst groups who have not been traditionally engaged in AI or tech policy advocacy. So think parents, think your local nonprofit organizations who advocate for very specific topics, and get them all engaged, building their critical AI literacies and articulating why these things are so important, and building the momentum so that they can all have a voice in decision making for our future.
Your perspectives are incredibly refreshing, both in this room and in philanthropy in general. I'm tempted to make them drag us off stage, but I've been told that we have 3 minutes left. Where can people find you and your work and your team in the coming weeks and months to absorb more of your brilliance and wisdom?
The Siegel team is everywhere because it's autumn and every conference happens. So go to any conference and you'll find someone from my team. But what I actually my one plug that I am prepared with is CUNY City Tech has been working on Tech for Us, which is a public interest tech focused series of things. And actually starting today at the Oculus, there's the NYC Pit pop-up, which is going to be on until November 6th and have a range of different activities every day. They're open in the afternoons. And so you can expect to see us there at various times, but in particular, we also have a screening that will be there. We worked with Road Trip Nation to do a road trip where young people explored public interest technology career opportunities, and we're going to screen that and have some conversation, and that'll happen at the Oculus as well. So definitely on November 5th. So definitely nycpitpopup.org is the website, and you should look at what they're doing. And for anything else, we're at siegelendowment.org.
Awesome. So I will just mention the Kapor Foundation Responsible AI Principles one more time. But no, the goal really is, those are live and launched. The goal really is to just engage around those principles. So if you all have ideas about places that we should be having conversations, workshops, bringing folks together to discuss, if investor community is kind of our next stop. So if you have recommendations, we are all ears and look forward to collaborating with you all.
Be careful what you wish for. I will be writing to you. And, I spend a lot of time in the woods by myself, but this is a room full of people with an amazing power and potential and agency to act on these issues. So thank you all for being with us today and this evening. Excited to head over to Boca de Baca. Is that right? You're welcome. To celebrate with you all. And thank you to Dr. Scott and Katy Knight for being with us and for being in conversation with me. I appreciate you both so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.